In this video, we're taking a very close look at the tropics as Hurricane Larry is kicking up giant waves and heading north. Also, two other areas of activity have popped up, which both have the potential to create concerning situations for the US. And then we're taking a look at the whole US to see how these storms will affect you. Welcome back, y'all. Ryan Hall here with the weather forecast. There's a lot of new updates today that we need to talk about, but before we get into the business, all right, before we get down to it, I got a fun little thing I want to share with you guys, okay? I was going through my computer the other day looking at old files, and I came across this clip. Some of you guys don't know this, but I used to do the weather the old-fashioned way on TV.
Over towards the Big Sandy River Valley, you guys are dealing with the same thing. It's just gorgeous outside. 78 in Pikeville, 79 in Prestonsburg. I tell you what, after the newscast, go outside and enjoy this because it's not very often that you see these kinds of evening temperatures during the dog days of summer.
So obviously that was a little while ago, but I want to see how good you guys are at judging exactly how long ago that was. How young do you think I was there? Was that 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Was it 15 years ago? If you want to play along, leave a comment down below with the month, date, and year you think this was recorded on. Whoever gets the closest will get a shout out in the next video. Now, if you're an old co-worker or a close family member or a friend, you're disqualified, okay? This is for you, the new people here on the channel, okay? Go ahead and leave your guesses down below. I'm excited to read them, but for now, let's go ahead and start talking about the weather. All right, here's a big old look at the United States of America, and as you can see, there's not a lot going on out here right now, man. In fact, the only area of interest is over here off the northeast coast. This is Hurricane Larry, and you know, it's pretty far away from Boston and New York, but it's close enough to where it's kind of odd. If you were to go outside right now, you'd have no idea anything was going on. And what's even more odd are the similarities here between this storm and a very similar storm that we had in 2001, 20 years ago. A lot of you guys probably didn't know this, but we had a Hurricane Aaron, take a very similar track to Hurricane Larry here around the time of the September 11th attacks of 2001. It's a very common story. You hear it all the time, how the weather was perfect that morning in New York. The skies were clear. There was nothing abnormal about that day. What a lot of people don't talk about is just off the coast, there was a big hurricane, Hurricane Aaron, which got swatted away by a cold front, just like Larry is, just in the nick of time. We're just about a day off here of this thing taking almost the exact same track during the same exact time period 20 years later. So that's just an interesting little tidbit there. Figured I'd share it with you. Some of you probably didn't even know about that. But yeah, thankfully, Larry is still curving off to the north and east, and it won't affect the US directly, except for the big old waves. All right, here's the latest 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. And as you can see, man, things are really heating up out there. We've got two areas of increased potential for the formation of new tropical cyclones. It's almost certain at this point that both of these will become tropical storms. But how strong will they get, and will they affect the United States? That's what we're going to talk about here in a second. First off, let's click on Larry here. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Look, it's 85 miles an hour. It's barely a hurricane right now. It's moving north-northeast at 26 miles an hour. This thing's going fast. By 2 a.m. tonight, early Saturday morning, it'll be a hurricane there in Newfoundland. It's kind of a rare sight to see a hurricane make landfall this far north, but it's not unheard of. You guys have seen them before. Hurricane warnings are in effect down here near the Avalon area, and this thing's going to be a tropical storm all the way up here when it gets close to Greenland, man. It's going to be one heck of a blizzard right there, I'll tell you what. But back here around the Avalon wilderness area, the hurricane, obviously the wind and the rain's going to be a little intense, but I think the biggest thing we got to watch out for here are the waves, okay? So if you've noticed in my thumbnails and for the past week or so, I've been talking about how the biggest impact here on the East Coast is going to be from the waves and the swells that Hurricane Larry brings in. And this is a graphic representing that, okay? If we look right here in the center of the storm right now, we've got 45-foot waves out here. That's insane. And since the storm isn't weakening very fast, I think some of those big waves are going to make it all the way up there. Also, just like depicted in the thumbnail, we're going to see 6 or 7 foot waves over here on the East Coast, maybe over 10 feet in extreme northeastern parts of the United States up here in Maine. There might be some minor coastal flooding associated with that, but the big danger here are the people that try to go out and play in the waves. So make sure you avoid the water over the next couple of days. It's not going to be very, fun if you get taken under or something like that. Also, we got 13-foot waves up here heading towards Nova Scotia. And then if we keep taking this thing north, man, as that center of circulation gets right there, once again, near the Avalon wilderness area in the southeastern portions over here near Trepassey, we're talking about some of these 40-foot waves. Okay, so this is definitely going to cause some coastal flooding, obviously very dangerous surf. So obviously, if you live over here, prepare for the wind and the rain and everything, but the waves and the coastal flooding might be the biggest problem up there, okay? Just make sure you're prepared for that. But other than that, Larry is going to leave us all alone here pretty soon as it ejects off to the north and east. Okay, back here to this graphic. Once again, like I said, we've got 2 areas of interest that could turn into tropical storms here very soon. The next 2 storms are going to be Nicholas and Odette. I personally think this one's going to be Nicholas and this one's going to be Odette. But even though Nicholas may form first, I want to talk about Odette first because that one has the best chance of impacting the US right now. Okay, let's go over to the weather models. All right, now we're taking a look at the Euro model with the precipitable water out here so we can visualize where those thunderstorms are going to be and where they start to turn and try to become a tropical system. Now, here's the thing that's got me concerned, okay? You see this big area of moisture, this giant plume of just millions and millions of gallons of moisture just hanging out in the atmosphere here above the very warm Gulf of Mexico. It's very unlikely that this is going to go across the Gulf of Mexico and not do anything, okay? There's a lot of tendency for cyclonic rotation down here. The environment is favorable for storm formation. So I do think we have to watch out for this becoming a tropical storm at least and moving up towards Texas and Louisiana there, okay? This model really doesn't show anything getting terribly organized, but what it does show is an incredible amount of moisture coming on land here. So even if we only get a tropical depression or a low-end tropical storm out of this, it's not the wind, it's not the waves and stuff this time that we're worried about. It's going to be the rain. I think we're entering a very concerning period here for southeastern Texas, especially with possibly some really bad flooding here, as all of this moisture just kind of goes right over the area and hangs out for a little bit before it gets ejected off to the north and east. According to this run of the Euro, we could be talking about well over 10 inches of rain from Houston all the way up into southwestern portions of Louisiana, even in central portions of Louisiana there near Lake Charles. This would cause widespread flooding once again because this is going to happen over a short period of time, all from the same storm. And I'm telling you guys, when these storms come off of the Gulf of Mexico, they mean business when it comes to the rainfall. They pick up all that water in the ocean and they dump it on you as soon as they get on land. So Houston, you're all too familiar with flooding. If you live in a flood-prone area, just go ahead and start making preparations right now because I think that might be a situation that we have to deal with here in the near future. Now, obviously, over 10 inches of rain would be, pretty bad out here. It would cause a lot of flooding, but the models are still getting an idea of exactly what's going to happen. And just yesterday, this same model was painting a little bit of a different picture. Yeah, so this is the 12Z run from yesterday, and this one is showing 30 inches of rain in some places. 30 inches of rain in southeastern Texas would be catastrophic. That's, on levels of which, we've only seen in some of the biggest storms that have ever hit over here. And once again, this isn't because a giant hurricane like Hurricane Harvey or something is hitting. This is just simply a tropical storm or maybe a low-end hurricane that's making landfall here and then stalling out and just dropping a ton of moisture here over southeastern Texas. So the vast majority of people over here are seeing, over 15 inches of rain according to this model, which is absolutely insane. So hopefully this one's wrong, okay? And hopefully we're trending towards a less rainy event like we saw in the latest run there of the Euro. But we got to keep this in mind. I want you to burn this into your brain here if you live out here because the last thing I want is for you to be unprepared, okay? I don't want you to think that this can never happen again, this can never happen, blah, blah, blah. It's not milk and bread sandwich time, but it is time to pay close attention to the weather as, there could be some developments that impact you directly. Okay, back here to the tropical weather outlook here. We've talked about Larry, we've talked about potentially Odette. Now, what about Nicholas, okay? This is a tropical wave coming off of the coast of Africa. A strong tropical wave is expected to emerge off the west coast of Africa tonight. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for gradual development thereafter. So this has a 70% chance of formation, guys, which tells me that this is more than likely going to become a storm out here. Let's see where it's going to go. All right, now we're looking at the global forecast model here so we can get a whole view of the entire Atlantic basin. There's Larry, okay, that's ejecting off to the north and east. Here's our next area of moisture that could become Odette there in the Gulf of Mexico, and this is our tropical wave coming off of Africa here. Now, this is just one deterministic run of the GFS. There are going to be a lot more of these things as we go forward, and what really matters in the future are going to be the ensemble runs and those spaghetti plots that we look at once this thing actually gets out over the ocean and starts forming. As of right now, the GFS really doesn't know what's going to happen with this storm because it's still on land. It hasn't sampled enough data from it over water to know what it's going to do out there. But this run of the GFS does show this thing start to rotate and start getting a little bit of oomph to it out here as it heads west in the Atlantic Ocean. This run is going to take this storm to the fish here, though, as it gets eaten up by another trough, okay? And that's, that's what the GFS shows right now, but I am not buying it, okay? I think that this this is probably going to become a more substantial storm. But even if it doesn't here, okay, there's a couple things that are concerning me with this long-term run of the GFS. The first thing is we've got another area of interest coming off the coast of Africa here. If we were to go a little bit further east, there's another one behind that. So there's a train of tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa, which is never good during peak hurricane season. So you can see just one right after another coming off there. And additionally, look at this. Last minute here, north of the Bahamas, another area of interest starts to spin, and we might have a tropical system here affecting the Carolinas all the way back on September 26th. 2021. Now, this one right here is way out into La La Land. It's very not likely going to happen, but it's something to watch. The main reason I wanted to show you this model was to show you all of the energy heading off of Africa. And now I'm going to show you what's going to happen with that energy. So we're still looking at the GFS here. Now we're looking at the pressure, the surface pressure out here. Hurricanes are very strong, okay? And they're very powerful, but they are very weak and fragile in their structure. They cannot plow through troughs and ridges and high pressure systems, okay? No matter how strong a hurricane is, it's completely dependent on the weather systems that surround it as to what happens with that hurricane. So as you can see here, Larry, this high pressure system was kind of placed back north and east a little bit, and it gave it a perfect path to kind of wrap around this way. However, a lot of our hurricanes do come from Africa if the high pressure can build out and become stronger here and then spread out further to the west as well. So if we put this GFS run into motion, you can see why I'm kind of concerned with what we're talking about here, okay? The further out we go, the stronger the high pressure becomes out here, and you can clearly see that there's a perfect pathway for these storms here to enter the United States. Not only do we have multiple tropical waves coming off of Africa, but we have a system coming into play here in the northern portion of the Atlantic Ocean that is indicative of sending storms to the U.S. So what we can hope for here is that these storms either don't get their act together and don't, start churning up and becoming big hurricanes, or we can hope that the high pressure is weak enough to where they can still curl up just in time to miss the United States, or we can go ahead and start preparing for possibly more big storms heading right towards the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, Florida, and it's even, it's not uncommon for some of these storms to go a little bit further south and then sneak their way into the Gulf of Mexico. So lots of activity out here. We're in peak hurricane season. Don't let your guard down, guys. More storms are coming. All right, let's zoom out, take a look at the whole U.S. and do another little quick forecast for everybody here. We're going to start off talking about temperature anomalies. If you're in the red, you're above average. If you're in the blue, you're below average. We're starting off with a big ridge in the west coast that's causing above average temperatures, and a big trough that just went through the east coast that's causing below average temperatures, okay? And we've been talking about this one for a while, okay? You guys saw this one coming. Don't say you didn't, because I've been harping about this for a while. Now, I do think that there's going to be another pattern flip in the future, so let's go ahead and talk about that. We're going to put this into motion, and as you can see, the southeast stays below average until, about September 12th, and then we start flipping back over to some of those warmer temperatures as another boundary system is moving through, okay? We got below average temperatures up here coming from Canada, and some of that warm air from the west is kind of bubbling up and getting locked in here across the Midwest and Ohio Valley. So we are going to see some warmer than average temperatures sneak their way into the East Coast once again, and you can see it's a little bit colder down there where we're having all the rain. And if we go even further into the future, you can see there's a couple cold fronts that come through, but for the most part, everybody's pretty hot and pretty dry out here, unless you get affected by, some of those storms, which do happen on those boundary areas between the cold air and the warm air. But our biggest pattern flip here is, once again, a big ridge is going to form over here in the west into Montana, Colorado, all the way over here, okay? But as we get into the end of September, that ridge is going to build up so intensely that when a big cold front comes behind it and finally has the oomph to take it out, it's going to crash like a tidal wave here in the Midwest and eastern portions of the United States as maybe a sort of a heat wave right before a big cold front comes into the Pacific Northwest, okay? So that's the pattern flip that I think we're going to enter. I do think we're going to see a large spike in temperatures and heat and dryness overall over here on the East Coast, but there's going to be this big pool of cold air that's forming in Canada right now that's going to really try to eject down to the south and east. That's going to bring some rain to the Pacific Northwest, thankfully. But when this does finally make it down into the central and eastern portions of the United States, I think we're going to see some big storms, some severe weather, some of those classic September low pressure systems with giant cold fronts and damaging winds and stuff like that. This is our second storm season of the year, okay? Everybody talks about spring. Nobody gives fall any credit. This is where fall comes through with the big storm systems, all right? So make sure you're ready for that. Obviously, we're going to continue to talk about it as we go forward. But as of right now, that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching the video today. I really appreciate you being here. If you haven't already, slap that like button, subscribe, and turn notifications on. If you haven't noticed, I've been doing some work to the stream room here, the storm seeking situation room, which is what I'm calling it. I've got even more monitors here now, and it's actually going to be very purposeful during the next live stream. I'm going to have the ability to monitor so many things at the same time. Hopefully it'll be a while before we have to do another 12-hour long live stream. I never do those unless things are going really sideways or bad. But just in case we do, I've got everything I need here to make sure that you are completely covered with every aspect of everything that's going on pretty much. So I appreciate you guys being patient with me while I work on this. But for now, I gotta go, all right? I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.